I'm Tobie. I'm 32 years old. I live just a little bit north of Christchurch in a little place called Loburn, and I have Ankylosing spondylitis. By day, I am a manufacturing jeweler, so pretty much anything to do with jewellery, we do it. Fix it, make it, remake it, melt it down, mill it out, bash it out. Outside of work hours, I pretty much just do the same thing. I make stuff. I make clothes for myself, wearable art garments, upcycle things. Pretty much if there's something I need or want, if there's a possibility I might be able to make it, I'll always give it a crack. And other than that, I am a mum, I guess, to 2 dogs, 2 pigs, 4 goats and 8 alpacas. So yeah, I stay busy, but as most people with arthritis know, movement is life, so I just don't stop. That's how I cope, I guess. Well, one of the many coping mechanisms. I was diagnosed in 2012 when I was about 24 years old. I had symptoms from about the age of 12. Then from the age of 13 to 18, I went to see 23, 24 different specialists over the years, none of which could figure out what was going on. This was in between, of course, going to school and training 20 plus hours a week at rhythmic gymnastics, which in hindsight didn't help because that flexibility and mobility I had from that sport just confused everyone as to where the pain was coming from and what was causing it. Then when I was 18, I had a bilateral hip laparoscopy. The surgeon afterwards basically said, it wasn't much in there, couldn't see much, can you live with it? So I kind of just gave up a bit really, figured no one was going to figure out what was going on, so I just had to manage it best I could, and yeah, this is just how it was going to be. Then when I was 24, my mum found an article in a newspaper about a girl who had so many symptoms that were similar to mine and had that same kind of medical mystery situation with all the medical professionals she'd been to, and it took 6 years, but she got a diagnosis of ankylosing spondylitis. So pretty soon after that, I self-referred myself to a rheumatologist, and it was maybe one appointment and an x-ray and a couple of other things, and I had a diagnosis, which was both a relief and a really weird feeling, because after all this time, it was my body attacking itself the whole time, which is a strange thing to learn, but also feels so good, I guess, to be on the right track and have a name for what you've been going through most of your life. I think if the world had been then like it is now, where everyone has a phone, so the internet, the entire internet is basically attached to your arm at all times, I could have at any point throughout those younger years gone on to Arthritis New Zealand and looked at all their resources, because they have all the different kinds of arthritis. They have resources for support groups, resources for parents with kids with arthritis. There's all different kinds of research and so much you can read up on that I feel like I could have self-educated myself a little bit and then known maybe a lot earlier to go to see a rheumatologist. But back then the internet wasn't quite as accessible. We didn't have smartphones as such. So I think, yeah, Arthritis New Zealand is a great resource to have, especially in this day and age where it is so accessible and there's so many different resources and so much research that you just get all the information you need to at least go in the right direction with your body. One thing I found in this day and age with Arthritis New Zealand is they do online discussions. So on Facebook, they'll set up an event with a specific date and time and theme, and someone from Arthritis New Zealand, who always seems to know their stuff, goes on and leads it. They start the discussion, and even if, like me, you don't necessarily feel like asking a question or you don't know what to ask, you can just read all the comments and the discussion so far and learn stuff you didn't even realize you needed to know. Knowledge is definitely power when you're in fight or flight mode constantly. Learning what your body's doing, or what a medication is doing, or how it works, or what inflammation really is, all these different things, it's great to learn and to figure out what's going on with your insides. to understand it all. And Arthritis New Zealand is there to do that. It's not even just the website. You can ring them. They hold events. It's definitely a resource that is worth having, even for people if you don't necessarily use it. It's so good to know that it's there, so that if you do have a moment where you haven't got some support for some reason, or you need to figure out something, or you just need to talk to someone who you know will understand what you're going through without you necessarily having to explain everything, it's just a great thing. And without donations, they wouldn't exist. So it's definitely worth donating and keeping them around for people like me. So hopefully people like me who are maybe younger and still figuring out what's going on don't have to wait 11 years to find out what's going on. I think a common misinformed view of arthritis is that it's something that old people get, and it's in their hands and their fingers, so they can't open jars and stuff, which is a huge understatement. I've also think people sometimes think that it's something that just most people get as they age, that it's just a general deterioration of your joints, which is just wrong. Arthritis is so much more. Like, it's pain. Sometimes it's a lot of pain, but it's so much more than that too. I know for me personally, I don't have a lot of problems with pain in the joints of my hands and fingers, but the inflammation that's always in my body causes a lot of fatigue. And for me, that fatigue comes out in feeling weak and dizzy, and I get tremors in my hands, which affects my work, of course. I'm trying to do little detailed things. You're trying to hold something tiny still with one hand and a torch in the other, and your hand won't stay still. And it's not necessarily something that people will think about with arthritis. I find with me as well, or have found, that because I've had it going on for so long, so there's been inflammation in my body since I was a kid, and it's been at high levels, it has caused other chronic illnesses like inflammatory bowel disease and polycystic ovary syndrome. I have insomnia and obviously chronic fatigue. You don't always see it. I'm very good at hiding it a lot of the time. So yeah, I guess a lot of people don't necessarily think about all these other symptoms that go along with arthritis. They don't always think about what pain is and what causes it, and what that pain and the cause of it eventually also causes. There's so many things. Arthritis is a jerk, and so much more than the simple idea that you have of it. I think the hardest part about arthritis is acceptance. You often find yourself having to accept stuff you don't want to accept, and that can be something as simple as not being able to do something. It can be a little bit worse, like something you used to be able to do that you can't anymore. Sometimes it can be pretty rough. Like, I spent all of my teenage years competing in rhythmic gymnastics. I could do some pretty sweet tricks, if I do say so myself. These days, I sometimes can't go outside and look up at the stars at night in my own back garden without feeling like I'm going to fall over because of the dizziness and vertigo I get from medications I'm on for my arthritis. I think a really hard part to accept is other people not understanding. It's a weird one because you want people to understand how much you're coping with, how much you're dealing with. You want people to understand that everything you do hurts and everything you do takes more energy than you have, but you're doing it anyway, you're carrying on. You want people to understand that you're kind of in fight mode constantly, and you keep moving to try and cope with everything. But you want them to kind of get that you're strong. You're really strong because of it. But you don't want to have to tell them. You don't want to have to say, you know what, I'm really struggling, or this really hurts. You just want to keep going, put your head down and carry on. Because if you say something, you feel like you're complaining. You know you're not, but you feel like you are. But also, if you say it out loud, you're kind of admitting it to yourself too. And then it kind of becomes a bit heavier. And also, sometimes if you say out loud how much you're struggling or how much things are weighing on you with juggling so many symptoms, someone else's reaction might be, oh, well, you go sit down or you go have a rest. But you know yourself, it's rest and sitting down, it's not going to stop the pain, it's not going to make the fatigue go away. If anything, it might make it worse because you've got less going on to distract you from it. So it's just a battle of wishing people understood, but having to accept in general that, like anything, no one truly understands it unless they've experienced it. And that can be really tricky to accept, because sometimes it just makes you angry. And sometimes you can have two people with the same kind of arthritis, like ankylosing spondylitis, and they could have two completely different symptoms. It's just really tricky to always have to accept what you've got going on and how tricky it is, and that it's all invisible. You've just got to accept that either I say this out loud or I carry on and deal with it.